What is going on, everybody? This is Beanie, and today we are going to do another tutorial, and we are going to be talking about how to build your lineup for events. And then we are going to, I'm just going to give you a few tips on, in general, how to think about building your lineup whenever you're starting to do events. And then we are going to build a lineup that would be eligible for the specific event that is going on right now, which is the Time Warp event, in which you have to use only flashback players and you have to have an overall under an 80, a team overall under an 80. So first we're going to go through some tips and then we'll build the lineup. Okay guys, the first tip is don't try to balance your lineup. And I don't mean that from like a handedness standpoint. I mean that from like an overall standpoint. The temptation whenever there's an overall cap is to try to get 25 players on your roster all around, like, you know, the silver tier. You know, like you may put this Michael Fulmer, this Michael Wacha, Julio Teheran, and then maybe try to get a couple of high bronzes to kind of balance that out so that you have a full roster of balanced players. I am telling you right now, do not do that. Oftentimes, you're not going to need a full 25-man team to be able to win effectively at events. Oftentimes, you will go through an entire event run and never use a player. And because of that, I think it's important to have a polarized lineup, a lineup of very, very high overalls, and then bring your overall down with a ton, or not a ton, but a bunch of lower overalls. And one area where you can get your overall down is starting pitching. And, you know, this is kind of taking the same approach as say like Battle Royale, where, you know, you don't want to draft good starting pitching because it's kind of random whenever you get those pitchers, and, you know, you're only playing for 3 innings, and a lot of times in events you're only playing for 3 innings. This specific one you're playing for 6, but I believe since there isn't any progressive bullpen fatigue, that you can get through a 6-inning game without having to dig too deep into your bullpen. So I don't think starting pitching is somewhere where you need to overbook, I guess would be a good word for it. You don't need to try to get some of your higher overalls and waste that space on starting pitching. And that kind of leads me into my second tip, which is identify spots that you don't think you're going to get a ton of value out of. I've already talked about starting pitching and how it's not really effective to waste spots on higher overalls on starting pitching, but there are other spots that you can do too, like oftentimes your bench is only going to be used for platoon players, or, you know, in case of an injury or something like that. So the likelihood of you digging too deep into your bench, it's probably not very high. They're probably it's probably the best idea to use your bench to drive your overall down rather than trying to get, you know, sneak that one extra player into your bench. I would much rather have those overall points in my starting lineup, because they're going to be playing all the time and I'm going to be getting the most value out of those guys. Another spot where you can drive your overall down is in your bullpen. I don't think that you need more than 4 or 5 bullpen arms to get through an event like this. It may, you know, if you don't have a full bullpen of guys that you trust, it may you know, come back to bite you a game or two, but I don't think it's going to hurt you bad enough to where it doesn't make sense not to put a few low overall guys in there just to get that overall down even more. Okay, and the next tip is to look for LowEnd Utility, and you can find LowEnd Utility all over the place. And when I'm not talking about those budget beasts, those great silvers, those great high-end bronzes, oftentimes when I'm talking about this, I'm talking about the commons, the guys who you're only using to drive your overall down, but you could see yourself using in certain situations. A few examples of this are Somebody like the 66 overall Willie Stargell. This is a left-handed hitter that can play 4 different positions, and he hits righties okay. He has 60 contact and 72 power. That's great for a bench spot because it drives your overall down, and he's a solid pinch hitter. He's not a great pinch hitter, but in an event like this, if your guy is throwing a righty and you have your pitcher spot coming up, this guy could have some utility. Another guy is the 70 overall Carlos Gomez. He's not a common, but he is an extremely low bronze, and he has incredible speed. He's a guy that you could use as a pinch runner, and he could even come in and maybe hit versus lefties. I know in an event game I had him on my bench and I brought him in to hit against the lefty, and he actually hit a home run for me. So he's not that bad against lefties, and with that speed, he can be a dangerous threat for you. Another bronze that you could use is the 73 overall Adam Jones, who is very, very good against lefties and has solid defense and speed to go along with it. So that's a guy who will definitely drive your overall down, but he would definitely be an effective guy to have on your bench. Now, one guy that you won't get any utility out of at all, but I think is extremely important to put on your events team if you were lucky enough to do the free legend giveaway on April the 1st. Whenever they did that, they gave away the 58 overall Mario Mendoza. And this guy is very, very useful in something like this because he brings your overall way down, and he only eats up 1 bench spot, and he will allow you to bring in better players into your starting lineup. You're not going to get any utility out of this guy virtually at all, but he does serve that purpose, so look out for guys like this too. Then finally on the pitching front, another bronze guy who is a lower overall, but I still think it would be a really smart idea to use him because he's honestly, he's my go-to lefty in my bullpen in an event like this, but because he pitches almost like a diamond. But it's the 76 overall Billy Wagner. And if you have the 88 overall and the 76 and you're tempted to, or even the diamond, and you're tempted to use either the gold or the diamond, do not do that. Use the bronze because you're going to get similar utility, at maybe a little bit worse utility out of him, but it's not enough to justify bringing your overall up that high in order to acquire him. Or in order to have him on your team, I should say. This card is extremely effective to have on your team, and he's not going to bring your overall up anymore. Plus, he's a lefty, and lefty bullpen arms, man, they are tough to come by in an event like this one. Okay, guys, but now that we've talked about all that, let's get into building our lineup. Okay, guys, as you can see, I ended up putting my 5 lowest overall pitchers into my starting rotation, mainly because I don't think I'm going to be using my starters to get more than like 1 or 2 outs. But there are a couple guys in here who are kind of sleepers. You know, this Steve, is it Steve or Stibe? I don't know. That card has some really interesting pitch mixes. This Cueto doesn't have terrible pronines. You know, there are a lot of interesting guys in here, but not guys who I would really consider using for more than 1 or 2 outs, just long enough for me to get into my bullpen, get them fully ready and all that. So, and look, it's already brought my overall down to an 87 overall, even with my stud team still in here. We still got a little ways to go, but it's a hell of a start. Okay, guys, now with my bullpen, I decided to put the Gaylord, the 68 overall Gaylord Perry and the 69 overall Jack Morris. Those are just guys who are going to drive my overall down. And then for my lefties, I put in the Billy Wagner and the Robbie Ross, basically because those are my only lefty flashbacks other than this 88 Billy Wagner, and I don't think he's too much better than the 76. A little bit better, but not worth the overall bump. And then for my righties, I went with the Francisco Rodriguez, the Joakim Soria, and the Steve Cishek. Guys who aren't dominant or anything like that, but guys who I can trust to get the job done. Now, if you want to go out and chunk out the stubs to get maybe the 82 overall Aroldis Chapman or the Drew Pomeranz or somebody like that for an event like this, that's okay. You can do that too. I didn't feel like I really needed them. And it wasn't worth going out and spending the stubs to acquire them. I figured I could get by without them. But if you think that those are guys that you would need, real shutdown arms that aren't going to cost a lot in terms of overall, that's certainly something that you could do. Okay, now moving over to my bench, you can see that I was able to sneak in a relatively high overall, the 84 overall Dante Bichette into my lineup, and it really didn't hurt me too bad on my starting lineup screen. So I was pretty happy about getting this 84 Bichette in here because he is a fantastic hitter coming off the bench relative to most guys who you would normally want on your bench in an event like this. This is an incredibly valuable guy that could be used as a pinch hitter, as a platoon, something like that, something along those lines. Very valuable guy to have. The rest of these guys really only bring one or two things to the table, except Mendoza, who doesn't really do anything well. And this Cliff Floyd, you probably aren't going to use a ton either. But the Willie Stargell, I talked about him earlier, very effective. And the Carlos Gomez has a lot of speed that I can use, whenever I see the need to do that. The 64 Cliff Floyd, he's, pretty well below average versus righties. He does have okay contact versus lefties, but that's that weird reverse split that we don't always like to see. But one thing he does have is 80 speed. So if you ever got in a pinch and needed a faster guy on base, you could use him in that capacity. Okay, now moving over to the starting lineups is where you can really start to see the fruits of this pay off. And starting out, I talked about the 80 Billy Burns. We have him in left field, a great leadoff hitter, a guy that we can, get on base with and do some damage. Okay, guys, sorry about that. I accidentally had Daniel Murphy in at second base, but he's a live series, so he wouldn't work for this event. But I was able to get the 97 Ian Kinsler in there, and it was no problem. And he is honestly probably even a better option than the Daniel Murphy at this point. So the 97 Ian Kinsler we have at second base. He, is a superstar in a lineup like this, where a lot of times you're going to be facing below average pitching and stuff like this. Love having this card in the lineup. Obviously, at catcher, we have the 94 Victor Martinez. You know me, I'm offense over defense, so I don't mind the bad defense at catcher right there. And he's just a monster switch hitter for me in my lineup. Center field, we got the Andre Dawson, one of the best cards in the game. In my opinion, maybe the best card in the game. Snuck him into the lineup. Right field, we have the 84 overall Ken Griffey. One of the reasons I have this guy in my lineup is basically because I'm almost done with that mission, but I'm not quite there yet, and I want to get him done. But he's also a monster versus right-handed pitching, so he's going to provide that for us. And protecting him against them trying to throw a lefty is the 99 overall David Wright, who is also a monster at the plate, and especially against lefties, but he's very effective against right-handed pitching too, and he has speed, good defense, all that stuff. Talked about the Aledmus Diaz earlier, a monster versus righties, and then topping it off, we have the 80 overall Willie McCovey. You can go a lot of different directions at first base. You could go the flashback Lucas Duda. You could go, with a handful of other guys. I tried to figure out a way to squeeze in the 74 overall Billy Butler to platoon with Willie McCovey, but I decided to put in the 84 Dante Bichette, and if it came to it, just play him at first base instead. Even though he doesn't play first base and he doesn't hit lefties as well as the Billy Butler, I felt like that he hits lefties good enough, and if they decided to bring in a righty to face him, he would be effective against that too, and the Billy Butler wouldn't. But yeah, guys, this is what my team would look like in this particular event. But the tips that I gave you, most of them can be applied to any event in the future, where there's an overall cap or something. Just look for creative ways to drive your overall down enough that you can really fit those studs into your lineup. That's my philosophy. I know a lot of people have the philosophy of trying to balance out their lineup, trying to get like where everybody on their team is like an 80 overall, and you know they're all like these budget beast cards and everything. And if you can do that, if you can manage to get those budget beasts in there and provide a little bit more depth to your team, I'm not saying that that philosophy is incorrect. Actually, I think it can be a very sound philosophy depending on what type of player you are. If you're a guy that goes deep into games like with pitching, and a lot of times you'll go into extra innings, maybe you struggle to score runs or something like that, to where you may be digging in deeper into your bullpen, or you need your starter to go longer, that could be a philosophy that works for you. But for me, somebody who scores a lot, somebody who typically has high scoring games and typically doesn't go into extra innings, I think that this strategy works. And if you're confident in yourself that you can score runs, I really don't think that you're going to need that 6th and 7th bullpen arm, and I really don't think you're going to need those starters to be all that great. And I really don't think that you're going to need that strong of a bench. I think you can use all of those positions to drive down your overall to get those superstars in your starting lineup. So that's the thought process behind this philosophy. I hope that this helped you. I hope that maybe you're looking at things in a different way now. But guys, that's going to do it for the video. I will see y'all probably tomorrow. I said that I was going to stream earlier, but I decided to make this video instead since there's events going on. But tomorrow I may do like a daytime stream or something where all I do is just like play events and stuff, because I've got to get those events wins, man. I got to get that 99 Griffey. It's been too long, and that's really the only thing that's holding me back, other than like 2 RBI with the 84 overall Griffey, and then that 4-hit 1 home run game with the 92 overall Griffey. If any of you want to help me with that, that'd be dope, by the way. But nah, guys, that's gonna do it. I will see y'all tomorrow. Peace.